Early on the morning of February 24th, 2022, as missile strikes began to ripple across Ukraine, one target was designated with supreme priority: Antonov Airport in Hostomel, situated less than 30 kilometers from the heart of Kyiv. The strategic calculus was clear and brutal. Should this critical airfield fall into Russian hands, the capital could be subjected to a lightning strike, potentially collapsing its defenses within a mere 72 hours. Yet, after just 2 days of intense, ferocious combat, this meticulously crafted plan began to unravel. The operation, designed as a decisive opening gambit, faltered at its most crucial point. The central question that emerged from the wreckage and chaos was simple. Why did this high-stakes gamble fail so catastrophically? The initial Russian strategy was a textbook example of a modern blitzkrieg, a war doctrine predicated on overwhelming speed and shock. The plan revolved around a swift, stunning blow aimed directly at the center of Ukrainian power. Antonov Airport was not a large civilian hub, but its single, expansive runway was more than sufficient to accommodate heavy transport aircraft. The strategic value of Antonov Airport cannot be overstated. It was the linchpin for breaking Kyiv's defenses in the war's opening days. Had Russian forces secured the airfield and held it for a mere 24 hours, the consequences would have been dire for the Ukrainian command. Airborne units would have rapidly expanded their bridgehead, creating a secure zone for follow-on forces. Simultaneously, mechanized columns advancing from Belarus would have surged toward Kyiv, their path cleared by the airborne assault. This combined arms maneuver would have risked the complete isolation and potential collapse of the Ukrainian government. In this context, the battle for Antonov was not a secondary skirmish on the periphery of the main conflict. It was Russia's single greatest strategic gamble of the opening phase, a decisive point upon which the fate of Kyiv in the first week of the conflict would hinge. The assault began with breathtaking speed. Around noon on February 24th, the skies over Hostomel filled with the sound of rotor blades as Russian Kyiv-52 and Mi-24 attack helicopters appeared, unleashing suppressive fire on the airport's defenders. Close behind them, waves of Mi transport helicopters descended. Ferrying elite paratroopers from Russia's prestigious airborne forces, VDV, and specialized Spetsnaz units. The operation was heavily supported by dedicated air assets, the clear and singular objective to seize the airport within hours and, crucially, to keep its vital runway intact for the incoming transport planes. The Ukrainian forces initially present at the airport, primarily composed of National Guard conscripts, were caught by surprise. They were limited in number and lacked the heavy firepower necessary to repel such a concentrated heliborne assault. In the initial chaotic hours of the engagement, Russian forces successfully captured a significant portion of the airport, seemingly bringing their plan one step closer to fruition. However, the Russian command had not fully anticipated the speed and ferocity of the Ukrainian response. Almost immediately, the Ukrainian military reacted with extreme quickness, redeploying available assets to contest control of the airfield. Artillery batteries were brought into position and began to target the airport grounds. Unmanned aerial vehicles UAVs were launched to provide continuous reconnaissance, feeding real-time intelligence to Ukrainian commanders. Units of Ukrainian Special Forces and the National Guard were rapidly dispatched to launch a series of determined counterattacks. The Ukrainian objective became starkly clear. There was no strategic necessity to retake and hold the airfield. Instead, the singular focus was to render it utterly unusable for the enemy. This shift in strategy proved decisive. The runway, the most critical piece of infrastructure, was systematically shelled by Ukrainian artillery, cratering its surface and making it impossible for heavy aircraft to land safely. Assembly points where Russian paratroopers were attempting to consolidate their positions were relentlessly struck. The most significant outcome of this rapid counterassault was that not a single Il-76 transport plane was able to land. The planned airlift, the very backbone of the entire operation, was severed at its inception, leaving the first wave of Russian paratroopers isolated on the ground. By the morning of February 25th, the strategic situation for the Russian forces at Antonov had dramatically deteriorated. The elite paratroopers, who had been intended to form the vanguard of the assault on Kyiv, found themselves cut off and encircled. They were critically short on supplies, ammunition, and most importantly lacked any form of heavy support. Their light infantry weapons were no match for the sustained artillery fire now being directed upon them. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces continued to reinforce their positions around the airport, methodically tightening the cordon. Artillery firing accurately from concealed positions at a distance pounded the airfield without mercy. All approach routes to Antonov were blocked, turning what was supposed to be a strategic breakthrough point into a grinding attrition trap. Some Russian units, facing annihilation, were forced to attempt a retreat, destroying their equipment as they fell back. Others dug in, awaiting the arrival of mechanized forces advancing from the north. But these ground columns were moving far too slowly to relieve the beleaguered garrison in time. From a tactical perspective, fierce fighting continued to rage around Hostomel and the surrounding areas for many days. Russian forces eventually linked up with the surviving paratroopers and established a presence in the region. However, from a strategic standpoint, the battle for Antonov Airport was already a catastrophic failure. The critical element of surprise, upon which the entire modern blitzkrieg plan depended, had been irrevocably lost. The ferocious and successful defense of the airport gave Kyiv precious, invaluable time to organize and consolidate its defenses, moving troops and equipment into place to repel the impending ground assault. Furthermore, the world, which had been watching with bated breath, witnessed that Ukraine was not going to collapse in a matter of days. The symbolic and strategic value of Antonov Airport had evaporated. The high-stakes gamble of a rapid attack to capture the capital had definitively failed within the first 48 hours of the conflict. The Battle of Antonov Airport offers profound military lessons on the limitations of modern warfare doctrines. It starkly demonstrated that large-scale airborne landings remain an exceptionally risky endeavor, particularly without first achieving absolute control of the airspace. It also underscored the fact that a captured airfield, no matter how strategic, cannot be held indefinitely without the timely arrival of reinforcing ground troops to secure the perimeter and expand the bridgehead. The battle highlighted how a flexible, adaptive defense, even when outnumbered and outgunned, can effectively disrupt and dismantle a seemingly perfect operational plan. Ukraine's success at Antonov was not a victory achieved through superior numbers or firepower. It was a victory forged through rapid, decisive leadership, the establishment of clear and achievable objectives, and a keen, ruthless understanding of the enemy's critical vulnerabilities. In the grand narrative of the conflict, Antonov Airport was far more than just a piece of strategic terrain. It was the physical location where the initial trajectory of the war dramatically shifted. It was where the pervasive myth of capturing Kyiv in a few days was violently shattered against the steel of Ukrainian resistance. And it was the moment the world began to view the unfolding conflict through an entirely different lens, replacing assumptions of a swift Russian victory with the reality of a protracted and brutal struggle. Had Antonov fallen completely and the airlift succeeded as planned, the history of 2022 could have been written in a starkly different and much darker ink. The battle for this single runway became a symbol of defiance and a turning point that would shape the course of the war for months and years to come.